And first of all, I just want to express my thanks to everyone that's here on the panel today and those tuning in. We're going to go through some quick introductions so you can get to know who's here. But before we do that, just so you can be acquainted with the webinar, you will see a chat box at the bottom corner. Feel free to go in the chat box, say hello, let us know where you are joining us from, and you'll also see a Q&A box. So if you can please submit any questions that you have throughout the webinar using that Q&A box. That's the easiest way for us to keep track of them. And then we will open it up for Q&A after a short presentation. So with that, I will kick off some introductions. First of all, my name is Kyla Jeffrey. I am the project manager from HeroX supporting this challenge, which means I've had the great pleasure of working with all the other folks on the call here today. So first, I will pass it over to Ward from Topcoder for a brief introduction.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ward Leving, and I'm the challenge architect for the NIST Differential Privacy Series. So I'm working with the Topcoder platform to get the specifications and the up to date and get the submissions evaluated and all that type of thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Ward. Christine Jenkins.
Hi, I'm Christine Jenkins, and I work in NASA's Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation, and I'm the challenge coordinator, so I'm supporting NIST on this differential privacy challenge.
Great. Thank you, Christine. And to our other Christine, Christine Task.
I'm the tech lead from NIST, so I'm the differential privacy expertise and general tech lead duties.
Yes, Christine is the one with all of the answers, so we'll be hearing from her lots today. And finally, Therese.
Yeah, hi, welcome everybody. And I'm Therese Manley, and I am a prize manager at the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST. And we are the sponsor of the challenge.
Awesome, thank you, Therese. I will pass it over to you to kick us off.
Sounds good. Christine, can you advance the slide one, please?
Sure. Almost certainly. There we go.
Okay, so as I mentioned, we are the sponsor of the prize competition. Public Safety Communications Research Division is one of the federally funded labs under NIST, which is the National Standards and Technology, which is a meteorology lab. PSCR's mission is to advance research for first responders across the United States. And we are strictly focused in the area of wireless communications for firefighters, law enforcement, emergency medical service providers. So that's our main mission. And just to give you an example, I live in the Colorado area, and we just recently had a blizzard. So it's a perfect example of how our research might help first responders in the area of search and rescue in a potential avalanche, high up in the mountains where there is no wireless communications available, and we still need those first responders or search and rescue teams to be able to communicate amongst themselves. We are looking at ways to improve that research. So as part of the wireless communications research, one of the technology areas that we support is in the area of data analytics. And you know, for first responders, we've recognized that the flood of data that is occurring in everyday society has really created some opportunities, but it's also created some concerns for our first responders across America. And so one of the areas of concern is within data analytics is data privacy. And the question is, you know, how do we secure but also use that data or the data sets for good use? Or how do we de-identify data sets and remove that personal information and make it more useful? So that's really the purpose of the challenge contest that has been presented here with HeroX and Topcoder. And I'll hand it off to Christine Task now, who is helping support NIST in this venture as a technical expert. Christine?
Hi. All right. So when we are looking at, right, so there are a lot of reasons why public safety might want to have data sets. In general, fire departments are not going to have data analysts on staff. But data analysts looking at things like fire event data can give very useful information about where service coverage needs to be improved, response times, potentially even predictive models, a variety of things. And so it becomes, at the same time, if you want to just go ahead and share fire event data, there's a reasonable, and even more so 911 event data, that can be very sensitive data. There's a reasonable argument to be made there that privacy is a serious concern. So for the compromise, we're looking at the identification techniques, and specifically at differentially private synthetic data generation. The idea that you will generate a differentially private synthetic data set that can be released in place of the real data set. And because of the differential privacy guarantee, you can be certain that nothing about any individual in the original data can realistically be inferred from the synthetic data. Aggregate patterns that we need to learn will be available, but nothing that can be traced down to one specific person. This is the third time through this. So first of all, I'll say that there are a lot of differential privacy resources on the top coder page. And if you're coming to us from the data science community or any other community and you're not familiar with differential privacy, it's a good idea to go ahead and read the full version. And there's lots of very good resources to look at. But very quickly, the basic idea behind differential privacy is so when you go to do synthetic data in general, what you're doing is you're building a model of the data set, and then you are using that to generate a new data set with a similar distribution. And we do that with differential privacy. We have to add in some random noise, and this is what helps us, sort of like a regularization step. This is what helps us cover up the impact that any specific individual might have. And the basic way the definition of differential privacy works is you imagine you have some process that is going to touch the real data and produce some structure. You want that process to be randomized. And that way it's going to have a probability distribution of possible outputs. So you look at the possible distribution of outputs, and you look at how much that distribution shifts if you arbitrarily change one person's data in the original data set. And you want it to shift by relatively little, so that what you get, or what you see here, the two distributions, one from D1 and one from D2, overlap heavily. And what that means then is that any given result R might have come from either one of those data sets. Might have come from D1, where Bob was in the data set, and D2, where Bob was not, or D1, where Bob had value X, and D2, where Bob had value Y. Because the particular result could have come from either case, you don't know anything about Bob. And like I said, this is something worth, if you're new to this domain, this is something worth sort of thinking about very carefully. One thing that you find yourself doing when you work with differential privacy is being very careful about how you touch the data. Because every time you touch the data, it increases the amount that your outcome depends on what the data set has. So if you're doing histograms and you make the bucket size dependent on the input values of the data, then all of a sudden your whole histogram is very dependent on particular details of the data, and that means when you shift Bob, in the worst possible case, things can shift a lot, and then you have to add a ton of noise to cover that. So like I said, I recommend you can ask questions on the forum, and you can definitely check out the resources for more details. All right. So we're hoping that developments that come out of this competition, this is very important for public safety. It's also important for the differential privacy research community as a whole, as contests always are in new research areas. And so we're hoping that developments that are coming out of this competition will drive major advances in the practical applications of differential privacy for synthetic data. And we've 3 matches into this, and things are looking pretty good. So tell you a little bit about the outline of the contest. So this actually started back, this has happened in many stages. This is the final stage that's starting now. But the first one started back in May of last year, and that was a conceptual phase where people submitted white papers. Phase 2, which we've been doing beginning in October, sort of through financial year 2019. This is when we've asked people to try out their implemented solutions. So actually generate synthetic data and have the quality of that data evaluated, where quality is dependent on the closeness of the synthetic data distribution to the real data distribution by a series of metrics. What we have done then is marathon matches. So there have been 2 marathon matches so far, and there is a third one. This is the third one now. Each marathon match takes 2 months. And the way it basically works for a marathon match, this is a top coder standard style data science competition that we've made some adjustments to make it work better for differential privacy. But the main benefit of this is it lets you progressively improve your algorithm over the course of a month before you submit your final refined algorithm for final evaluation and scoring. So the first phase of this match that we are in right now is the provisional scoring match. And basically the way that works, or the testing phase, the provisional phase, is there's a leaderboard, and there's a link to the leaderboard, the standings and rankings from the problem statement. And all you have to do to get on the leaderboard is to submit 3 synthetic data sets generated at the 3 values of epsilon that we give you, which I believe are 8, 1, and 0.3 in this round. And then you have to use the value of delta that we give you. So you submit 3 data sets, and you end up on the leaderboard. They need to be correctly formatted. If there's an issue with formatting, you'll see a -1 show up on the leaderboard instead of a score. And you can actually, if you're having some problems with the formatting, what you can do is you can submit an example. You can use an example test rather than a full test, and that you can do as many times as you want, and that'll help you get the formatting straight. And there's more information on that in the contest website. But you get your formatting right, you get up on the leaderboard, and if you don't like your score, you know, a couple times a day, I think up to 6 times a day, you can try again. You can try again tomorrow. And you can keep improving, and these rankings will keep shifting over the course of the match. Now, because we are looking at differential privacy, here's where we have an adaptation to the traditional top coder approach. And you'll notice this when you look at the leaderboard, which is we do pre-screening. So all you need to do to get on the leaderboard and see a score is to submit your data sets. But if you want to get a higher score, actually multiplied by 1,000, then what you need to do is, in order to get a higher score multiplied by 1,000, what you do is submit to pre-screening. So the way pre-screening works is every Monday we have a SME review session. You will submit, and specifically your team captain, who needs to be a US citizen. Nobody else on the team needs to be, but your team captain who makes the top coder account needs to be a US citizen. They need to be the one to submit a clear, complete, didactic write-up of your algorithm. So you submit a clear algorithm specification and a clear privacy proof. Make this as easy for the SMEs to read through as you possibly can. So very well organized. The SMEs will do then basically a spot check on your algorithm and make sure that you're making a good faith effort to satisfy differential privacy and make sure there aren't any obvious mistakes. And if you pass pre-screening, You'll be notified on the leaderboard. If you fail, we'll give you direct feedback about what failed. But if you pass, you'll be notified on the forum, and then you will see your score on the leaderboard multiplied by 1,000. So you'll suddenly shoot up to the top of the leaderboard. So the next DP pre-screen day is this coming Monday. And if you're interested in competing and you can get us a write-up before then, that's very good, because that point bonus that gets you onto the top of the leaderboard is a valuable thing to have before we hand out the progressive prizes. So 2 weeks into the match, just to get everybody sort of off of their chairs and into the pool, we hand out 4 prizes to the top four teams on the leaderboard. So the easiest way to do that is, get your data sets in to get on the leaderboard and get your write-up into pre-screening, so you can end up on the top. And there's more details on the progressive prizes there. So Monday is the deadline for you, and then I think we're going to see if we next Monday you may be able to get in just sort of last minute, right before we hand out the progressive prizes. Okay, it is possible. I do want to note for us to miss things during the pre-screen, and so it's not guaranteed. It's just a sanity check, but we do catch things sometimes. So I'll talk about that more in a second here. Pre-screen is not the end of the DP validation process. So after we get through the testing phase, then there is the sequestered phase. And basically what happens is a little over a month into the match, we look at the top of the leaderboard and we invite those teams to the sequestered phase. The sequestered phase is when we actually make the decision on prizes. And you need to give us a Docker container that meets the specifications in the problem statement. And that runs efficiently is always best. Less than 24 hours is good. So we'll be running it multiple times over multiple values of epsilon in order to get a reasonable area under the curve score on accuracy versus utility. And this is how we will decide your final score and your final ranking for prizes. Also during the sequestered phase, we need that updated version of your complete privacy proof and write-up. And that will go through a subject matter expert validation process that's much more careful than pre-screening and does catch sort of more subtle mistakes. So it is possible to get invited to the sequestered phase and then end up being eliminated. And this is how we determine rankings. And there may be additional validation steps, so we may have some updates on that over the course of the contest. Then once we've decided, we've validated and we've got final rankings, this is how we end up awarding the prizes. There we go. We'll catch up. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the details for this match that's coming up. So we are going to be using the 1940 census persons level data for Colorado in the provisional phase data. So the second line I want to draw your attention to, we'll be using, in the sequestered phase, we evaluate on a different data set. In fact, in the last match, we evaluated on 2 different data sets. They will be of the same data type, so roughly the same schema and the same sort of social processes that produce the data, but they won't necessarily be the same distribution. So in the previous match, we had given people the 2016 data for provisional data, and we evaluated on both 2017 and 2006. 2006 varied a fair amount in distribution. But of course, some fundamental properties are still the same. Let's talk for a moment very clearly about, and I see there's a variety of questions. I'll get to questions here at the end. But let's talk for a moment very clearly about public data. So people who are familiar with differential privacy will note that when you when we give you this provisional data set, the Colorado data set, and you start working your way through it and thinking about it and refining your algorithm in light of it, you've now basically violated differential privacy for that algorithm because it's influenced, for that data set. Because the Colorado data set will influence your algorithm design in a variety of ways that you're not bothering to track or compute sensitivity for. And the way we look at this is that Colorado data set that we give you as provisional data is public data. You can assume that it's already been posted, it's already known. You do not need to provide differential privacy for that data set. However, all other states, so in the previous match, it was all other years of fire data. In this match, it is all other states are considered to be not public data. I realize they are public. All of the fire data sets are public. All of these data sets are always public because otherwise there'd be an awful lot more paperwork in participating in this contest. But we ask, it is the case that you can use the Colorado data set as public data. You can't use any of the other states as public data. If there's anything additional that you want to use as public data, so for instance, there's a map of Colorado that's, independent or something like that, let us know. So include that in your pre-screening, how you're intending to use public data. And this is what we've asked in all the matches. Tell us what you're intending to use, and we will basically let you know. If you have any questions on the forum, if you have any questions, just put them on the forum and we'll answer them if you're not certain. So, but I think everybody basically has in mind what is proper here, right? So you were assuming that the Colorado and things about Colorado public, things about other states, we're going to actually ask you to provide privacy for. And if you want motivation for that, it is the case that since the census only happened every 10 years, the distribution of the data shifts significantly between censuses. And so while we are not trying to compare, for instance, the 1930 and 1940 census data, you can think about this as given the 1940 census data for Colorado that you have to keep, that you're allowed to use publicly, but then you'll be needing to provide privacy for, a 2010 Colorado, which we are imitating by using a different state. So we think the difference between sort of different states is a fair way to evaluate that. Okay, now that we've talked about that for a long time, let's talk about scoring. So the way scoring works is the two scoring metrics you see here are the ones that we are adding this match. If you look at the problem statement, there are all the details you could possibly want, including links to previous competitors' packs that tell you everything you need to know about the way the scoring works. But the basic philosophy here is that in the first match, we had one type of scoring that was based on randomized 3 marginals. In the second match, we had randomized 3 marginals and a metric based on row similarity. In the third match, we have all of those still. So we're still going to be evaluating on 3 marginals. We're still going to be evaluating on row similarity. And these 2 additional ones. So the previous 2 sets of metrics, if you've been following along with us, were all based on bucketing. Here, we will not be bucketing. So the income inequality-based metrics, this is actually going to be the Gini index. And it's going to be compared between the real and the synthetic cities for each of the significant cities in Colorado. So what we do is we're going to find the difference between the Gini index at real Denver and the Gini index at your synthetic Denver. And so on through Fort Collins and everything else and through the rural areas. And then we're taking the L2 norm of those differences. And that gets us our income inequality-based score. And then there's also going to be a pay gap-based score, pay gap-based metric. And the idea here is to look at differences of differences. So basically there's some noise in each sort of statistic that you guys generate. And when I start having things that are based on statistics of statistics of statistics, that noise aggregates. And so we want to empirically do a check on that. So we're going to be looking at the difference in average income between men and women. And this is actually, we're going to be ordering the cities of Colorado based on their pay gap, which 1940, you know, this is easier than it could be, right? There's a pretty clear pay gap in 1940. So you can imagine a newspaper magazine is taking some of this differentially private synthetic data, and it says, hey, here's Denver ranked by gender pay equality. So here's Colorado ranked by gender pay equality. Where do you want to move in Colorado? And here's the things in order. And what you'd hope is that if they're basing that off of synthetic data instead of real data, the rank ordering would be very similar. If any cities were, exchanged from the rank ordering, swapped, it would be because they had very similar scores. And so there wasn't a meaningful difference between them. So that's what we're looking at for that. Be a good sort of sanity check. We are on the final match, so that has some exciting things to add. First of all, like I said, the first time we're handing out money is less than a week. So get yourself on the leaderboard, get through pre-screening, and inevitably the first 4 prizes basically goes out to whoever gets through first. So we would love to see that leaderboard all fill up. We have a total of 62,000 in prizes. So I've got a slide here in a second that breaks that out by first, second, third place, and so on. Also, really important and fascinating here is the fact that we have this is the last match, we have these refined, beautiful solutions, and we would like to see them open sourced and made available for the community to use. So there's going to be an extra $4,000 bonus for the top 5 challenge winners who provide their solutions in an open source repository for use by all interested parties. So BSD is a good license, Apache 2 is a good license. And we are looking forward to seeing the products of this effort made generally available. Sorry, this reminds me. When you go to do the differentially private validation during the sequestered match, we get your write-up, we also get your source code. And so that we read through. So you will have already had an opportunity and motivation to clean up your source code. You actually have to give us documentation that shows where in your source code each of the steps of your algorithm occurs. So we know that we have the algorithm specification, we have the proof. You give us documentation that connects that to the source code. And several people read through your source code. And if it's too confusing, we write you and ask you to clarify it. With the end result being that in this 2 months, your code's basically going to go through a boot camp. And it'll be a large part of the way to being in good shape to be released at the end of this. So one of the things you get for participating is basically external review of your system. And so, if you're looking at open sourcing your system is somewhat daunting, work with us and we'll help you along the way. Also, very important, this is NIST. NIST is standards and technology and differential privacy and advice and all sorts of other things. And so we are looking at taking the outputs of this and putting them into conferences, workshops, talks, things that we've learned. We're going to be doing more work on techniques for evaluating synthetic data, which we've developed on our side over the course of the challenge. And we hope to see journal special issues, possibly plural, that help summarize your work, what you've learned, and what we've learned, and implications for the field as a whole. And all of this feeding into NIST's efforts to do standards and technology. So this is going to be a very exciting match as we wrap things up here. Here are your dates. So April 15th is when we do April 15th is when we're going to be seeing those invitations to the sequestered match. And then sequestered match, we take 3 weeks to do our careful evaluation, and then you will see things show up on the forums. I'll say this again, so for anybody who has not done something like this before, staying in touch on the forums is the way. Any questions you have, any updates we have, very freaking importantly, if you're invited to the sequestered section and we have any concerns about code, something's not working, something's not intelligible, we'll generally let you know on the forums. So it's very important to stay in tune on the forums. And that's where we'll see the winners announcements in about a month and a half. All right, these are the prizes. And reasonably straightforward. And these are the websites. That's all we got. I think we'll go through Q&A now. I see we've got some questions from Paul over on the chat. Okay, so whether pre-screens carry over from the previous match is one of the questions. So in general, pre-screens have carried over from past matches. You get your pump, if you passed your pre-screen and if you passed your validation, or you didn't fail your final validation in the last match, then your bonus gets passed on to this match. This is if you're going to make significant changes to your algorithm, especially if you're going to change your final algorithm, your fundamental algorithm, we do ask that you resubmit for pre-screen. We're not going to invalidate anybody's previous pre-screen just, on the assumption that they're changing. But if you do change, we really encourage you to submit to pre-screen. And the reason why is if you change to something and you don't submit to pre-screen and there is some weird little flaw that, we could have caught with extra eyes on your system, and we don't find it until the sequestered, if you have a mistake in your new approach and we catch it during pre-screen, you can fix it and resubmit to pre-screen and therefore be fine when you hit to the sequestered phase. If you don't fix and resubmit, then when we get to the sequestered phase, if there is a mistake in your algorithm, then you're completely invalidated. So pre-screen is both to kind of keep the top of the leaderboard from being populated with people who, aren't doing differential privacy at all. But it's also importantly to make sure that you have extra eyes on your system early so that if there's anything that looks like it might be a problem, we can let you know and you have a chance to fix. So I'll say that if you were past pre-screen in match 2 and you change everything, and you don't tell us and you don't resubmit, you will get all the way through sequestered, and we'll see your new algorithm when you submit the write-up at the end of the sequestered. And if you pass, then that's great. You can do that path. But I really would recommend, if you're going to have fundamental changes, please submit to pre-screen. It's probably safer for you. And the second question is about IPMs. So the Colorado data set has actually been, it's not, I say that it's the Colorado 1940 census data set. The reality is that it's a subset of that. It's only the person's data. We have done some processing. We've removed a batch of columns and so on. So this is a downstream product. And this is all you need for the contest. You can find the 1940 census data for all of the states, which you're not allowed to use, sort of in a variety of places. That's over on the census website. They've got them nicely up on the IPMs websites. And like any other researcher that uses those data sets, researchers all over the world who do, you can access them and look at them and whatever you want to do. But for the contest, the only data set that you should really be using is the processed one that we're giving you. Okay, do I have any more questions? So first of all, Paul, you're in chat. You can let me know if those were answers that worked for you.
Awesome. I have a
Okay,
question. Oh, sorry?
Sorry, I was just, Paul responded in chat. He said that those were good answers, so.
Awesome.
Carry on.
Thanks, Paul. All right, and yes, please keep posting your questions in the Q&A log in the chat. That's what we're here to answer. And if anything comes to you after the webinar, the forums are a great place to ask them. So here is a question for Christine. Is the match using event data or microdata tables such as those released by statistical agencies?
So it is the 1940 census data. For this one, we're no longer using event data. This is survey data.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the epsilon value used in final evaluations?
Yes. So we will be using, we're more generous this time. We're using an epsilon of 8 as our max value for when you're submitting to the leaderboard. We have 8, 1, and 0.3. For the sequestered match, we will start out by using those same 3 values, and then if it's not possible to clearly distinguish a ranking among the submissions, we'll start doing more values of epsilon in order to get more points on that utility curve. So we can go down, we have gone down very small before, even to 0.01. Basically, we're going to get as many points on the curve as it seems feasible and seems needed.
Got it. Thank you, Christine. This next question is probably a good one for Therese. Therese, can you talk about participation by non-U.S. citizens?
Sure, yes. So non-U.S. citizens are more than welcome to participate in the contest. As long as you have a team captain, you can also receive prize awards. If you don't have any U.S. citizen on your team, you can still participate, but recuse yourself. Some of the rules on the match are on challenge.gov. In particular, match contest rule number 8 speaks to the eligibility and U.S. citizenship. You also must be 18 years old or older. And when I mentioned U.S. citizenship, it's also or permanent resident of the United States or its territories. So those are some of the eligibility requirements for participation.
Great, thank you, Therese. And you mentioned the team captain as an important role. Ward, can you talk about what a team captain has to complete? And Therese, if you don't mind muting, I have a bit of an echo.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi there. Yes. So our team captains are the ones that should submit their team entries to our Google form. That I think the link for that is on the specification itself. And then the team captains, and this is the most important thing, are the ones that are actually going to be making the submission. So members of the team should not be submitting. It's really only the team captains that should submit to the challenge itself. And those will be recorded on the Topcoder system under the team captain's handle. So that's good. And then last but not least, of course, the checks, the award prizes are going to the team captains too. So this is a little different than Topcoder's typical way of doing teaming. Because NIST is handling some of the awards for this challenge themselves. So we've said it a couple times, but this is just a reminder that NIST will be paying the captains, that the check will be going to the captains. Great,
thank you, Ward. Okay, another one for Christine. Any advice for submitting Docker executables for the sequestered testing?
Follow the forum. So that would be Sergey Pogodin, who you will see, I think, a fair amount over in the forums. He is the tech lead on the Topcoder side. So I believe we're going to require that the Docker containers expose as parameters epsilon and delta. They'll get given both the input data and the schema as input. And there's, I think, a lot of posts on the forum right now already sort of discussing all the details of that. And I think also, I think it's important, a little bit less important this time than it was in the previous match, but don't hard code things too much to the Colorado data set. So for instance, Colorado has some number of cities. I think it's okay to assume that the number of cities that Colorado has is public information. It's the set of possible values that Colorado has in that column. When we switch to a different state, it's going to have a different number of cities. So don't hard code things about the schema into your system, or you're going to have very creative performance if you switch to on the sequestered data. So again, there's a lot of other. Sorry, there's a lot of information on the forum. If you want to know details, just please ask any question you have. Okay. And then I see another one here. So let's just as one more reminder. So pre-screening this Monday is your first shot to get pre-screened before the progressive prizes go out, the midway point prizes go out. For a little bit of a photo finish, a little bit of drama, the day that the prizes go out is actually another pre-screen day. So it is possible to procrastinate a bit and submit us a write-up all the way up to the very day of the prizes, and then actually, shoot up on the leaderboard, be very exciting, and be eligible for one of those 4 prizes. The tricky bit being that sometimes we can't pass people immediately on the pre-screening if their write-ups aren't clear enough, so we're not sure if we should pass or fail them. You're only going to be eligible for that point bonus if we can pass you with no questions or confusion on the 25th. So if you submit this Monday, we've got a chance to give you your feedback if there's any concerns, and you'll be able to submit again and pass by the time that we're handing out the prizes. If you wait all the way to the 25th to submit us something, and if there's some issue, either it fails for some reason or else it's not clear and we need more feedback from you, you won't be able to get in by the prize deadline for the midway point prizes. So next couple Mondays are important. It should be fun to watch the leaderboard over the next couple Mondays too.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. Submit early and check the forum. That's the message that I'm hearing from all of this.
That's what we get.
Keep your eyes on that forum. Fantastic. Well, we've covered all the questions that we've received so far. So if you have anything else, feel free to pop it into the chat right now or the Q&A box, and we can address it right now. Otherwise, like we were talking about, the forums is your place to go. So we're monitoring those very closely. So if you have any questions that come up after the call, feel free to share them there. I just want to take a minute and thank everyone that attended today and for the questions that you asked, and also a huge thank you to both of our Christines, Ward, and Therese for joining us on the panel.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.